And we're back with AP as we see it live in Las Vegas at the 2025 Big Ten Football Media Days. Our very special guest, Yogi Roth, the Fox analyst extraordinaire. Yogi, is there a surprise team or surprise teams in this league for you, Big Ten?
Well, I'll tell you what, one just walked past us in UCLA. I think Deshaun Foster, an esteemed alum of the Bruins.
Yes.
Remember when he got the job? And I think even him and Washington and Jed Fish, they're kind of in the same bucket for me. Nick Saban retires, shocks the world. Kalen DeBoer leaves, shocks the world. And all of a sudden, this domino effect happens. Jed Fish gets hired. Chip Kelly leaves to go to Ohio State, shocks the world. And UCLA is trying to figure out, where do we go? And they go to one of their own, in Deshaun Foster. Well, both for Jed and Coach Foster, they were behind the eight ball in terms of hiring staffs. They missed an entire portal window. Like, they had to navigate a lot that doesn't get a lot of play. And I think they both have done masterful jobs in that. Let's just start with Jed. He loses Steve Belichick, his defensive coordinator, to go with his father, Bill, to Carolina, and he hires Ryan Walters, former head coach in the Big Ten, one of the more esteemed defensive minds in all of college football. And I think that's going to be huge. You know, Jed referenced it many times. You look at the Final Four last year, every team had a coordinator who had head coaching experience, whether it was Chip, whether it was Al Golden, whether it was Kyle Flood at Texas, and I'm blanking on the Penn State with Tom Allen. Tom Allen, that's right. So like everybody had a head coach. So Jed did that too. I love that. And then for Coach Foster, he brings in Tino Sinceri, who to me is a rising star. Right, got his career started at Alabama, was under Coach Saban, went to Florida State, like around Jimbo Fisher. And he's just been around a lot of minds. Then, of course, Coach Signetti at Indiana last year. I've been at UCLA a few times this offseason. He's going to get this thing rolling. And they have, in my opinion, a guy that I would pay to go watch play in Nico Iamaleava. UCLA, that's the first time they've had a guy like that since Josh Rosen in like 2015, 2016. Mm-hmm. So I think there's an element where it's hot. They got a cool scheme. They're recruiting LA really well. Defensively, they've always been really stout. They did well in the portal. They're going to run the football. Like, I think those two teams are going to be really tough outs for everybody as this league goes on. So I think those two can make some noise. And then I'll finish with Minnesota. I think Minnesota, I'm buying them. They could make a run at getting a CFP berth. Like, they'll be in that conversation 4th, 5th if the Big Ten gets 4 or 5 teams in, as we would probably project at least 4. Yeah. They got huge games. They got to go to Oregon. They got to go to Ohio State. They got to go to Iowa. Can they win 1 or 2 of those? Because I think Ohio State and Oregon are going to be playoff teams. They got Drake Lindsey as a quarterback, who I think is going to be a star there. Darius Taylor is one of the better backs in the country and in this league. They improve at wide receiver in the portal. Coy Parrish, we talked about as a Heisman candidate. Like, I can't wait to watch them play. And I think that's that second tier of this league. If somebody gets hot, right? If Illinois gets hot, you start looking at this like they could take a run at this thing. And who knows, make some noise, see where your seating is in the playoff. And we could have an all Big Ten natty like we almost had a year ago with Penn State against Ohio State.
Last year, Indiana, I just loved them. I was all for them being in the playoff because they beat everyone on their schedule. They beat Michigan, a team that Ohio State did not beat at home. They beat Washington as well, I believe. And they got beat by 23 by the eventual national champion. Tennessee played up there in the playoff, got beat by 25. And everybody jumped on Indiana when they lost to Notre Dame by 10. I thought it was very unfair because that turned out to be one of the closer games. I know it was 17-3 at one point, but when you're looking at 27-17, I think that was a final. You get an onside kick, maybe you get a touchdown, maybe you get everybody a little bit nervous. But that was an exceptional 11-game win, the first time in, I think, 126 years. They never won, I don't think, 10, and they won 11. So I was all for Indiana. And like I said, I don't think they're going anywhere with Fernando Mendoza. I saw him beat up Auburn. I think the first half he was 15 for 17, big, strong, 6'5", 230 or so. Nice arm. And I think Coach of Indiana, he found, I think he struck gold there.
Well, that team just has such an edge to them. It's really fun to watch because, you look at where everybody came. Like the core players, their best players at every level on defense were under-recruited. They all came from JMU. Yeah. You look at offense, Fernando had one offer, and it was Cal, coming out of high school, coming out of Miami, Florida. So I just love that part of this team. I think their chip, their edge, whatever you want to call it, that's an advantage for them. And then you look at how they play. Their defense is salty. Brian Haynes is a rock star in terms of a rising star in the sport. He could have gotten a couple other head jobs. I'm going to come on back. You look at Mike Shanahan, the offensive coordinator, former Pitt Panther wide receiver, an absolute star in the profession. So I can trust. Like I always go back to like, what do you count on? What can you count on the most? I can count on Indiana being a tough out every single time out. I can count on Fernando being more dynamic. And when you go back to the playoff for all of our friends in the South, Ohio State's a heck of a game until they punt the ball away to kick off the second half, and it's to the house, Caleb Downs, and then it's over. You look at the Notre Dame game, and they're driving inside the 10. It's a pick six the other way, or it's a turnover and then it's a long run the other way, whatever it was. So if you know the sport like you do, there's just moments in games. So I think it's easy to jump on non-traditional teams saying they're not worthy. And I think we're not having the right conversation because it's worthy about being in the playoff. It's worthy about being in the playoff. There's no sport where you look at the two, let's just take the NFL. The Chiefs get a bye and let's just say the Rams get a bye. Like if they're the 2-1 seeds, like you're going to expect them to meet in the Super Bowl.
Probably.
I think when you look in college football, like we have a problem with like a non-blue blood getting to the playoff. That's pretty cool that SMU and Arizona State and Boise State got. Like I love that part of it. And if you're an Alabama team, and I love Kalen, he would be the first one to say, we got to beat Oklahoma. They got to go win your games.
3
man.
points.
Like, you don't get a pass. And the thing that often frustrates me and has for decades now is I think that's let's be real. What's happening in college football is there's two leagues that are separating. So how on God's green earth does the SEC stomach playing Mercer, playing Western Kentucky, playing some of these, to me, embarrassing games in week 11 in the season when it is even more dramatic in the haves and have-nots?
That's right.
It's a health concern. I think it's a safety concern. I think it's a slap in the face of the game. And I get it. If you're Greg Sankey, you're the SEC, like it's the best for you to get there. But if you're in the committee, you can't not ding them for that. That's part of it because that is a conscious choice to say, we don't want to go and play. Look at SC. They're playing 9 conference games in Notre Dame.
In Notre Dame.
Why would they ever? Why are you still playing it?
Yeah, I think Coach Bielema, he mentioned either last year, maybe it's the upcoming year, SEC 12 teams are playing 29 G5 and 7 FCS.
Come on,
36 games in the SEC.
What are we talking about? Like that's just not the right thing for the health of the sport.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I want to bring up Penn State, Yogi. They're a natural for the playoffs because they win most of the games and they lose 2. But now a little bit of pressure on them. Preseason number 1 many places. Starting quarterback returns. 2 excellent running backs. 3 transfer wide receivers. The spectacular tight end is in the NFL, but that's a good football team. Can the coach, can he be relaxed? Can the team perform? That's been the issue, I think.
I think they can. And I also think 2 things can be true, which you're playing Oregon at home, was a hell of a team. You got to go to Ohio State, and you're going to get everybody's best. Yeah. You may stumble, right? Yeah. Oh, being perfect is not the world we live in anymore in college football. In fact, I think there's lessons learned a la Ohio State from their 2 losses a year ago, led them to go win and go on the run they did. So would I pick them to be the Big Ten champion today? I would. And I looked back at the history of Penn State and James Franklin's tenure. To me, they just kind of suffocate you. Like, you just keep playing. The longer it goes, the more physical they get. They're always going to be tough on defense. They bring in Jim Knowles as defensive coordinator. Zane Durant, Denai Dennis Sutton, they're 2 of the best defensive players in America. They look like every monster defensive end in the SEC. So they're really, really talented in a bunch of levels. And some games will come down to a couple.
So Yogi, that SEC schedule, it leaves a lot to be desired. When you have the slogan, it just means more, it can't be just a slogan.
No, and I think, look, you know me well enough. Like, I want to be always insightful and thoughtful. And thoughtful is like, I understand why. I understand why they don't want, because in their eyes, like, every week is a bloodbath. It's fair. It's the same thing in this league, in the Big Ten. Like, you can't argue it. Like, we just talked for 20 minutes about it. In addition, while that puts them in the best position for the playoff, you can't argue that it's an inequity within the game. So I'm looking at an Illinois team or a Washington team or a Nebraska team, like a fringe, call it 4 or 5 seed, that's had to not only play 9 conference games, but play 7 in a row potentially. Washington, I think, goes 9 conference games in a row, and they have, I think, 5 opponents that they play after the opponent has a bye. That would never happen in the SEC. And I just think that the way that is set up in Week 11 is a disservice to the game. I think it's an embarrassment to the league. And I think I don't think it's even a safe game. And if I'm the head coach at Western Kentucky or Mercer or any of those schools, and I'm taking a run, why do I want to go play against one of these massive powerhouse opponents and hurt myself and my chance to go win a playoff game?
Yeah, think I'd look for a bigger check if I'm going to make that.
I just think we have to. It's a bummer. Like, make it early in the season. Make it a spring game. Like, if it's all about the money, which I get that it is, and that's why those play those games. And every once in a while, we'll get an App State, Michigan. I just think we have to catch up to the times. We are in everything else. Right. So I hope the SEC changes that. I don't think anybody in that league could look any of us in the face and be like, yeah, we're really proud of what we do in Week 11 for the majority of our teams.
A minute. 5-11 or 4-4, etc. for you?
I understand the thought process. I think I like the people in the Pac-12 and 5-11 and why they would want that, because they want a greater discussion around the at-large bids. But I also completely align with what the Big Ten has proposed. If you're going to expand it and you're going to play nine conference games, yes, you're probably automatically going to get 4 in, right? How do you not? SEC, you're going to get 4 in. So why don't we make it even more entertaining and have these play-in games last week of the season? And why don't we, if we lock in the 4 spots, then we're going to invite teams to play Texas and Ohio State in Week 1. If not, you're going to say, all right, I got to get through my 9 conference games. SC, Notre Dame, see you later. If you're not going to have that, and you're going to have this dramatic just disagreement on 8 versus 9, or like, I just think that it's a disservice to the game. And what I hope happens, everybody involved always goes back to what matters most and why we have a job. Without the ball, without the game, we don't have it. So let's kind of put our egos and our agendas aside and ask that question: what is the best thing and the reality for the game moving forward?
Final thoughts, Yogi Roth, Big Ten football analyst extraordinaire. We'll be right back after these messages with AP as we see it.